Hello, good evening, good day, everyone. It's Evran again, and today we have another great guest, and he's the author of the Software Craftsman, one of my favorite books, Sandro with us today. We are going to talk about software craftsmanship, one of my favorite topics, let me say, one of the topics that changed my vision for the software development. Hello, Sandro, and thank you for
Hello,
accepting our offer.
hello, Evren. It's my pleasure to be here with you and the Turkey Java community as well. So it's always good for me to meet other communities around the world. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. So today we will have like a fireside chats as
Mhm.
Sandros are doing on Coder's site. So also you can write your questions to the comments. So I will ask them. Sandro is also checking the comments. We will try to answer them directly. So it will be like an interactive chat. And let's begin, Sandro. Let's make a quick intro about yourself, then we will deep dive into our questions about software crafting.
Cool. So you want me to describe a little bit of myself?
Yes,
Uh,
yes, please.
cool. So yes, I'm a software developer by heart. I was born in Brazil, started my career in Brazil, moved to London in 2004, and I've been involved with the software craftsmanship movement basically from the beginning. I was involved with the Agile movement before. I have always been part of technical communities. I was part of the Java community in Brazil and then the Java community in London as well as soon as I arrived. And and then yes, I like it a lot, the software craftsmanship movement, and decided to write a book on it. And now I have a company that is based on software craftsmanship principles and values.
So, Sandro, first question is about, of course, what is, let me say, software craftsmanship? What is software crafting? So, I know there are many meanings. It's not like two words. Can you just make a description about it?
It's very difficult to describe in a few words because you have software craftsmanship as a movement, and that is a whole historical sequence of events, let's say, that led to software craftsmanship. So there is software craftsmanship as a movement, and there is software craftsmanship as a mindset. They are very related to each other, but I think that the way to I normally like to explain the history because, like, one thing is to say, like, craftsmanship is X, but those things they emerge within a context, and if you want, like, I can probably like go a little bit of through the history of explaining like what it is, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was like in the late 90s there were a lot of different groups of people trying to come up with different alternatives to software development. I believe that most of us that started in the 90s, we were coming from the waterfall model or even some rational unified process model. And there were those alternative methodologies or groups of people, if you like, that they were proposing for us to work in much smaller increments and also bring developers much closer to the business. And those were the early days of agile software development until in 2001, 17 people, they went to a ski resort in Utah. So basically, they had two lists. Martin Fowler had one list, Uncle Bob had a different list. And I think that Alistair Colburn said, hey, you both are trying to achieve the same thing. Why don't we combine those lists? I think that they invited 25 people and only 17 could make. So they went to the ski resort in Utah, it's called Snowbird, I think, and they created the whole agile software development. And agile software development is an umbrella of multiple principles, practices, and methodologies. Scrum is one of them. Extreme programming is another one. There's feature-driven development. There's Crystal. There's quite a few under that umbrella. So am I talking about agile? Because it's impossible to talk about software craftsmanship without talking about agile. So back in 2001, people like myself that were developers, we were really excited about agile. We felt that it was an opportunity for us to work in smaller increments, not be designing system for 6 months So the kind of waterfall process that we had, but also that we would be closer to the business. So developers would have like equal saying. We would sit down together, define things together. And that was really appealing for a lot of people like myself. What happened in the following years is that that group of people, they were not a very happy family, if you like. So there were some disruptions, some like that group was broken into smaller pieces, and the Scrum side took off, and that was a good and a bad thing. A good thing is because like Scrum helped to make Agile popular, right? So a lot of companies they heard about Agile because of Scrum. They even associated, like, for them, like Agile and Scrum were almost the same thing. So in one way, the good thing is that companies were evolving their processes, becoming more agile. However, the engineering side, because that was supposed to be a developers movement, the engineering side of Agile was left behind. That was supposed to be the extreme programming side. And that made a lot of people upset, including myself, and many others, including Uncle Bob, for example, because he was part of the original group. So then they said, look, this is not what we had in mind. Because then I say, like in the book, that I said that Agile took a detour, right? So then, because companies only adopted the process side and forgot about the engineering side, then they started criticizing Agile. And we developers were still doing the same things as always. So that was the beginning of the craftsmanship movement, because a lot of people were disenchanted with the Agile thing. Is, this is just another management tool. And then we started talking about the engineering side. And then a group of people in Chicago in 2008, led by Uncle Bob and a few others, created the software craftsmanship movement. And people like myself that were on the other side of the Atlantic, like, we really liked those ideas. And I decided to start a software craftsmanship community in London. But software craftsmanship was born as a reaction to Agile. And this is a software craftsmanship movement. So the movement was a way for developers to say, look, we want our own movement about professionalization, so do things well and stuff, but we don't want that to be hijacked by managers. So the craftsmanship was a big reaction against Agile. Even in the first years, when you look back at 2010, 11, 12, if you went to conferences at that time, it was carnage. It was like the Agile people, like the craftsmanship people like myself and many others, like criticizing Agile, and then Agile criticizing craftsmanship. And then there was Lean as well. So people from Kanban criticizing Scrum and craftsmanship. So it was everyone criticizing everyone. But we had to come strong because we wanted to put the focus back on engineering. And that's how the software craftsmanship was born. So that is the movement. And then there is the mindset. The mindset is how we see our profession. It is how we, for example, there is a certain of principles and values. And I say, look, this is how I want to behave as a professional. And that is the mindset that, for me, more often than not, is healthier than movements in general.
So, Sandro, by the way, so in Agile, we have an Agile manifesto, like, as I remember, 15, 17, 19, something like that. And on the software craftsmanship, we have also a manifesto with 4 items. So this is an extension of Agile, or they are tightly coupled and inner class of the Agile? What do you say about this?
They are. The manifesto, the software craftsmanship manifesto, I have mixed feelings about it. I think that if you put that manifesto into perspective, and if you remember when it was written and why it was written, then for me, I like it a lot, because, like, it is an extension from the Agile manifesto, right? So basically what they did was they took the Agile manifesto and took one step forward. So they pushed the boundaries a little bit more. But that was, in a way, I wouldn't say a direct provocation, but they were trying to say that Agile back then, that Agile, the way it was not enough. And that's why the manifesto was created. That's why they pushed the boundaries on the Craftsmanship Manifesto. So from that perspective, that historical perspective, I think that it was an important thing for us to do. But if you think about which manifesto is stronger, for example, the Agile Manifesto for me is stronger because they were a much clearer difference between how it was before and how it was after Agile. The Craftsmanship just pushed a little bit. But I think that it was important for us to have a set of principles that push us a little bit forward and give an identity, if you like, to the movement, right?
So I have another question about this. So in the mid-19th, let me say, with Campbell, we have the extreme programming, then Agile and software craftsmanship, as you say. So can we think software craftsmanship without the principles of extreme programming or Agile, or they are bind to each other?
This is a very cool question, actually. Yes and no. As a consultant, I'm a consultant. I need to say it depends, right? But as I said, because of the history, craftsmanship was a reaction to bad Agile, to Agile without XP. So from this perspective alone, Agile craftsmanship is associated to XP, because as soon as we start talking about craftsmanship in 2008, 2009, 10, 11, the things that we talked the most was extreme programming, was test-driven development, pair programming, continuous integration. It was all the XP practices. They were at the center of software craftsmanship, right? So let me just push my camera down, and because sometimes my camera loses focus. I don't know exactly what it is. As I keep moving, yeah, there you go. So
it's good.
So from that historical point, craftsmanship was really strongly related to extreme programming, and it was a reaction to Agile, right? So it was a reaction from the implementation of Agile, but without criticizing the Agile principles. We still liked the short feedback loop, the inspect and adapt, because that's exactly what you have in TDD, in pair programming, continuous integration, short feedback loop, inspect and adapt.
Exactly.
So those principles, those Agile principles, we always valued. What we didn't like is how they were implemented with Scrum. So from that perspective, yes, it's connected. However, craftsmanship is far more than XP. So this is a discussion that we had in the early days a lot. And I was really adamant. And even a few years later, I don't remember exactly when I started talking about 2015, 16, I don't remember now. But I remember going to conferences and saying that we should detach software craftsmanship from extreme programming. Because the way that I see things is, let's take test-driven development, let's take extreme programming and software craftsmanship. Test-driven development is a practice, right? So it's a means to an end. You have a problem, or you don't want to have certain problems, so you use that practice. So for a very specific purpose, you have a practice that addresses some problems. So that's a practice. Then extreme programming is a methodology. A methodology normally contains a set of practices. Extreme programming has 13, if I'm not wrong, where test-driven development is one of them. So a methodology is something bigger. There is a mindset, there is a ways of working, there are practices that you follow. And then you have craftsmanship that for me is a mindset. It's similar to Agile. Agile is a mindset, right? Scrum is a methodology. And I don't know, backlog grooming is a practice, or demos is a practice. So for me, the importance of detaching craftsmanship from XP now is really important, because we need to be always focusing on what is next. What is the best way for us to do our job? And that is the mindset of the software craftsmanship. And the practices, they should come and go. TDD is an awesome practice. I love it. But is that it? Like we discovered everything. Like for me, the mindset is, what is better than that? What is the next set of practices? So that's why we need to detach craftsmanship from extreme programming.
It's like continuous improvement.
Yes,
I
exactly.
think. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like the software development itself, by the way. If you are a developer, crafter, you should continuously improve yourself. And as you said, it's the mindset also should improve. So we have 2 questions, by the way. I want to ask them also, Sandro. One is from Yarman. Is software craftsmanship a lonely journey? Let me say. I think it's from Red Kit.
Right. Hi, Herman. I know Herman. Herman is normally comes to our fireside chats. It's good to see you here, Herman. So I think that not really. There is certainly a personal journey in there. I think that probably is a better way of answering your question. There is a personal journey. There is no doubt about it. But it doesn't mean there is a lonely journey. Yeah. So you need to have your own journey. No one can have that journey for you, and you cannot have that journey for anyone else, right? So you need to make those changes within, right? That's your career, your life, your profession, and so on. So that is your own journey. But fortunately for all of us, there is enough people in the world that likes the software craftsmanship mindset, what we are trying to achieve. So there is a lot of like-minded people. Herman, if I'm not wrong, you are in South America. I always forget if you are in Chile or Argentina. So everyone is in Turkey. I'm in the UK. So as you can see, like people in different parts of the world share that same journey. So I don't think it's a lonely journey, but that is certainly a personal journey.
So also from the manifesto item, you should create productive partnership. So, I mean, it's not like a lonely journey. You should make partnerships like the crafters, the craftsmanship. So I agree with you, Sandro. Also, we have another question from Çağrı. He's also a founder of the Volksdev, another development community in Netherlands and Turkey, by the way. What do you think about Scott approach? Can we say it's the second version of the agile mindset?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by squad approach. Is it like, are you talking about the Spotify model, like with squads, squad tribes, and
I suppose yes. The Spotify model.
I don't compare the two. I never made that as association this way. So because like when I think about, I'm not sure if you are trying to compare the Spotify approach with Scrum, or if you are comparing that to Agile itself. Because for me, as I said, Agile is a mindset. Is working, and for me, like I can summarize Agile in working short and fast feedback loops, expect and adapt. That's for me how Agile is summarized. So from that perspective, I don't see any conflicts between Agile mindset and the Spotify model or the Scrum or XP or any of those. For me, they are all aligned to Agile, right? Even craftsmanship is aligned to that mindset. But if the question is like, do I prefer the squad model or the Scrum model? I'm also not even sure if they are incompatible. I think you can have like a structure of squads and tribes and the way that you share information across the organization and promote knowledge. But it could still organize the work of teams in iterations and use a Scrum approach or for some teams a Kanban approach. For other teams, I don't see them incompatible. So I would not think about them being a second version.
I think it's like an extension, by the way, the Squad or the Spotify of Agile, trying to improve some parts, but I agree with you. Also,
probably to Scrum, I would say, like if you want to scale, think you are So it should, that I could see that. That I could see.
So we have another question. Software crafting can slow us down on our side projects or startups from Furkan. What do you think about it? Because he's asking, I think, like TDDs, pair programming, the clean code side, the quality, other stuffs. But for future, if you just think about the further steps.
Yeah, so it's really important to get the terminology correct. And I'm not being picky, is because it's really important, because like when we misinterpret the terminology, we end up criticizing or trying to say good things about the wrong methodology or mindset. So for example, software craftsmanship is a mindset. It doesn't have a methodology. There's no such a thing as software craftsmanship methodology. A methodology comes from methods, right? So you have a method, and the methods have practices and stuff. Craftsmanship doesn't have that. Craftsmanship is a mindset, is the way that you look at profession. You trying to be the best you can be. You satisfying your customers, putting effort in sharing your ideas with the community, always involved with the community, doing what you're doing here. So craftsmanship is a mindset. Then we have the practices, and I think that's like in your question, is like when you mention software craftsmanship methodologies, I believe that you might be talking about things like extreme programming, which is not a craftsmanship methodology, right? Craftsmanship doesn't have methodology. So if we take from that perspective, what I would say is that every time that you are asked or you decide to work in a different way that you do today, you will slow down. There is an initial cost of learning. Yeah. So for example, each one of you watching this video now, there is a way that you work, and you learn to work in that way. And from your standards, you are very productive. Yeah. You are very productive. But if someone or even yourselves decide to, let's say like we're in the Java community, I assume that most people here are very proficient with Java. All of a sudden, I say like, okay, but for the next user stories, we need to do that in Rust or in Clojure. Immediately, if you are not fluent as you are in Java in those other languages, your productivity will drop. Or if you say like, oh, instead of using the normal services approach that we do, we need to have a Lambda. So as soon as you introduce a new technology, a different way of working, your productivity will go down. And that's the same with test-driven development, right? So if I ask you to write tests before and you are not used to do that, you will be slower. But at some point, remember when you were learning Java, for example, I had to Google all the time to know which collection I would use. But then you learn. Or Java, what that was, like Java 7, Java 8, as soon as the new collections API, the functional side, I had to Google all the time. Now I internalize, now I know them, right? So for me, it's the same. It's not about the methodology. It's about how familiar we are with them and how proficient we are with them.
Also, we have a saying in Turkish, changing the horse just in the middle of your journey will slow you down. So it's like this one, I think. So for the TDD, as you said, if you are not familiar with it, you may be slower, but after that time, your velocity will increase and probably your quality will increase also. As you said in your book, you apply TDD or not. It's like 1 or 0. It's not like we are applying that one or not.
And we measure the speed, if you like, at different levels. Because, for example, normally people will think about how fast they can actually type the code. Yeah. So if they are not used to TDD, of course that they will build a simple piece of code faster without TDD than with TDD. There is no doubt about it. But if you measure the entire cycle time from someone starting a feature all the way to production, and when you add multiple developers and multiple teams doing the same, you will see that cycle time of multiple features done by multiple developers will be far longer without TDD than with TDD, because you don't need a QA cycle at the end. Yeah, and then they find bugs, and then you need to go back to all the way to the beginning. So the number of bugs, the amount of waste in your process will be significantly reduced if you are test driving code.
Yeah. So I think, as you said, the feedback cycle will be reduced. So you will get more inputs in a quicker way. So you will fix it, go, and you will achieve what you are doing. So by the way, Herman is from Chile. He wrote
Yeah.
it.
Herman, I'm sorry, man. Like I asked you this question multiple times. You already said multiple times that you are from Chile, and for some reason, I always associate you with Argentina. So, because I have a few people from Argentina that are also
Yeah.
always close. But anyway, so but
So
it's good to see you
we
here.
have, by the way, hello, Herman. And also we have one question from Valerio. Hello, Valerio. Hi. He asked, did you hear about Dave Fairley saying that craftsmanship is insufficient and we should take back to software engineering?
So a lot of people say a lot of stuff, right? So and I don't know how much I care anymore. Because like the problem is how they interpret. Like David Farley, I know him in person and stuff. He's a very knowledgeable guy. There's no doubt about it, right? So, but the thing is, it depends. I don't know. I never asked him, for example, what is his what how does he define software craftsmanship? Because if he is saying the software craftsmanship is about extreme programming practices, I would agree 100% with him. And also, if we just prefer my definition, that is a mindset, you don't go anywhere with just the mindset, because you need to have also technical knowledge. For example, okay, I have a mindset that I want to be a great professional, that I'm going to invest time in becoming as good as I can be. We invest time trying to satisfy my clients. But I still need to have skills. I still need to know architectural patterns. I still need to know how to automate tests or pipelines or stuff like that. I still need to know well the technology that I use. I still need to know how to architect systems according to their operational requirements. So from that perspective, nothing is sufficient. See what I'm saying? There's no such a terminology. There's no agile or craftsmanship or continuous integration or anything. None of those things is sufficient. The complexity that we deal today, you need a much wider set of skills. You need a very good mindset to learn all of them and try to be good at what you do. And that's what the craftsmanship brings in. But there's no such a single methodology or technique that would be sufficient. From that perspective, I would also agree. I just find that his definition of craftsmanship might not be the same as mine.
Exactly. So let me ask a question at that point, Sandro. How you call yourself a software crafter, a craftsman, let me say, a true software crafter? We have the manifesto. If you sign it there, are you becoming a software crafter, or what you should do? As you say, you should follow that mindset, improve that mindset all the time. Let me say, what do you say about it? How we can become a true software crafter?
I don't think I have a good answer to this question, because like it's when you say
It
that
depends again. Huh? It depends again.
it depends, exactly.
Yeah.
So in the past, mainly in the early days of craftsmanship, of course, that I was far more intense, let's say, because we really needed to create a difference. We are really trying to make a statement, not only to people in Agile, but even to developers themselves. So, but it's very difficult. For example, I cannot go to someone. I don't like the idea, and I know that people that I like, friends and people that I admire, sometimes they go and say, "Oh, you are not professional if you don't do X." I don't like that approach myself. So I think that when you decide to say that I am X, like in this case, I am a software craftsman or a software craftsperson, so you are trying to, with one definition, try to convey a set of values that you subscribe. Yeah. So, but there's no body of there's no regulatory body that you subscribe and need, like doctors and lawyers, that you need to pass a test or so that they can say, look, in order for you to practice medicine or law or be a civil engineer, at least I don't know exactly how it's in Turkey, but at least like in Brazil and I think in the UK, is You need to pass the bar or the. We don't have that. So in theory, anyone could just say, look, I'm a software craftsperson or a craftsman or craftswoman, whatever people prefer. But what really makes them be something is how they behave, right? I'm not religious myself, so I normally don't like to use. But when you decide to say, like, I am of certain religion, yeah. So I'm a Catholic, I'm a Jew, I'm a Muslim, or whichever one you pick. When someone says that, you would expect that person to behave according to the principles that religion conveys. And with craftsmanship and agile is the same. So anyone can call themselves, but then what we will judge is judge. If they are working with me, I would not judge what they say they are. I would judge how they behave, basically.
So let me say, in my early days of software development, I was looking what is the top level, let me say, and in the mid 2010s, I saw your book, the Software Craftsmanship. What I understand that, let me say, there is no top level. You should improve yourself all the time. You should share what you know, the value. You should give a value to the community also. So improving is a very, let me say, important, a crucial factor for me to become a crafter, by the way, from my point of view.
So, say it again. Repeat that again to me.
So improving yourself and sharing what you learn to the community, share it with the community and improve others, mentorship or pairing, let me say, is an important factor to become a software crafter from my point of view. So I see that there is no top level. You should improve yourself. I'm like 17 years experience in software development, but I'm still improving myself. I'm not saying I'm a good software developer, but I know I need to improve myself day by day.
Yeah, I think this, for example, those behaviors are very aligned to the software craftsmanship mindset and the manifesto and so on, right? So I like the idea of there is the productive partnerships is for me a very important aspect in there, because like you have like the well-crafted software as part of the manifesto. You have well-crafted software, we have steadily adding value, community of professionals, and productive partnership. The other ones, I think that they are self-explanatory, but the productive partnership it's for me is one of the most the strongest things in there that were different. I mean, because that's where the real push for professionalism comes from. And when I say professionalism, I'm not saying that someone that masters a technique. I'm not talking about, I know TDD very well. That for me is not. Knowing practices or technologies well is a means to an end. For me, the thing about being a professional is that you are providing a service to someone at a professional standard, right? So someone is paying you. It doesn't matter how you get paid. If you are a permanent employee, if you are a contractor, if you are a consultant, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, you are providing your services in exchange of a salary, right? So this makes you a professional, right? So the professionalism in craftsmanship is making sure that you are an excellent professional, right? That you can deliver excellent quality service. So that is for me a very, very important aspect, because in order for you to be an excellent professional, you need to establish a much closer relationship with your customers, with the people paying for your service. You cannot be an excellent professional if you just say, like, they tell me what, I'll do what they tell me, and you don't have that close relationship, that productive partnership, as we call it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think also the cover of your book, the subtitle, let me say, the professionalism, pragmatism, and pride, give some hints about it. These three words.
Yeah. So So I think that those three words, they were quite important for me. They are still quite important for me. Um, so as I said, in professionalism is, if I had to just choose one word to summarize software craftsmanship, I would choose professionalism, because professionalism would involve everything else. Would involve excellence, would involve like us trying to be the best we can be, and that means that we need to learn, and we cannot only learn within on our own. So sharing ideas is part of your learning. So professionalism would probably involve all of them. But then you have the pragmatism and pride. The pride, it's almost like some people don't like the pride word. They feel that it's a bit arrogant, or and I think that it really depends of you use it. Because like one thing is to be pride, to have pride. To have pride, it means like I'm proud of what I do, right? So, for example, this came from the reason I chose that word is because when I was thinking about the book, and I was thinking about my history and people that I met, and when I was writing that book, I also met a lot of people that worked in Eastern Europe, in Asia, mainly India, and I remember that in some of those places, for example, I remember speaking to some developers. They said like, okay, I want to become a manager. So for them, the career progression was becoming a manager, is moving away from software development. So for example, and that was seen like, for example, being a software developer was something less than other professions. So the pride came from there. You say, look, no, I am a developer. I want to make a statement. So I'm proud of who I am. I'm not ashamed of being a developer, right? But in the past, the developers were at the bottom of the chain. The chain.
Yeah, exactly.
So craftsmanship was, so that's where the pride came from. The pragmatism is very interesting, because like when at Codurance, like we also chose a few words to be part of our values. So we don't have pride, but we have professionalism and we have pragmatism, but we have excellence as well. And for me, this is a very cool discussion that we had, because like pragmatism in the craftsmanship world, we focus a lot in excellence. We constantly talk about excellence and quality and stuff like that. And then someone says, no, we need to be pragmatic. And when someone says that, normally there is an association of there is an association that being pragmatic means cutting corners or doing a bad job or not focus on excellence. So now we have a problem, because like in the craftsmanship world, there were a few side effects, and one side effect of focusing on excellence is that some people took that to the extreme and they lost pragmatism, which means that they say like, we need to do the best software ever, but at the expense of many other things, at the expense of blowing up budgets or not caring about delivery because they were spending too much time. Oh, I need to do this small user story, but I want to refactor the entire system for 6 months. So then we had a problem, because a lot of people say, look, I don't want this craftsmanship, because if excellence or quality takes that long, as I think one of the questions was about, so if those guys are going to be so slow, I don't want that. Yeah. So going back to pragmatism and excellence, we had to resolve that. So how do you resolve pragmatism and excellence? Because they are almost like in opposing directions. And it took me a long time, a few years after I wrote the book, to actually understand. So the way that I now explain that I wouldn't call it dichotomy, because it's a false dichotomy. I would say like, imagine that in a software project, you have constraints. Yeah. So time is a constraint, is a valid constraint. Money is a valid constraint. Skills are valid constraints. Certain deadlines are constraints. Like Black Friday happens once a year. Summer happens
exactly.
once a year. Easter, Christmas, all the some of those things, they happen once a year. If you miss that, just next year.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so those are constraints that exist in an organization. Even organizational structure are constraints. For example, in some organizations, you will not be able to change the structure of the organization just to solve your user story, right? So if you want to change the organization structure, it will take far more effort, far longer. You cannot do that within the boundaries of your iteration. So if you understand the constraints that you have, including the state of your software, and you understand what are the valid constraints and what are the constraints that are made up that you should remove, then you create a pragmatic boundary. What it means, like, I'm going to do my job within those constraints. And within that pragmatic boundary, you have excellence. So you cannot have excellence that is unbounded, because unbounded excellence leads to what one of the guys were saying on the chat, is that they are going to spend like 6 months refactoring a method.
Yeah, exactly.
So you need to have a pragmatic boundary where within you have excellence. And that's why I
Exactly.
like the idea of pragmatism and excellence together.
In professional life, let me say, we don't have a title. It's not important, but like software crafter. But if you say, I'm a software crafter, how should I behave in a professional life? Because there is a relationship between managers, as you say. So if I want to refactor that part of the code, it will take 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but we are wasting with time and money, the scope, other stuffs. So how should a software crafter behave in professional life? Also the relationship with the managers, team leads. And there is also a, let me say, title in your book, Learn How to Say No. It's also important for me. It's an important part. So, Sandro.
So this is like a very complicated question, because like as a software craftsperson or software crafter, I normally use, so when I'm referred to myself, I say software craftsman, right? So, but as a software craftsperson, you should always be striving to do the best you can within the constraints you have. That's how I visualize that. And you always need to remember that the codes that you're producing is not your baby, right? It's not a baby, right? So the code is there to be changed whenever you can, and you need to make the right compromises whenever you need. So then this is what I was saying. So within the, first of all, make sure that you are not slow because of your own incompetence, right? Because, for example, when you say like, but TDD is slow, it depends on how competent you are with it, right? Because, like, for example, Java was slow when you were learning it. Java is not slow anymore after you were working with that for a year or more, right? So now you understand how IntelliJ works and how everything works and all the shortcuts and stuff. TDD is the same. It's a skill as any other, right? So first of all, make sure that the things that you do, you are quite fast at it. And that is on you. That is not in anyone else. This is on you, practicing, learning the skills and stuff and being very good at it. So then you're not going to be slow because you're doing TDD. That is one aspect. But then there is the scope of the work. So, for example, when you negotiate with the business, first of all, you need to establish a good relationship with those people. You cannot be in an antagonizing relationship, like for example, they are the business, I am the tech. So if you already start with that us and them, you will always be in conflict. So, but ideally, if a good professional would be able also to create good relationships and be able to say, look, product owner or whoever person from the business, and say, look, let's sit down, explain to us exactly what you're trying to achieve. Let's forget about the user stories, because like this is a problem, because sometimes we just work on the very tiny thing. So let's put that aside for a moment. Give us a much wider perspective. What are we really trying to achieve here, right? So what are the main goals? What are the real important things that we need to achieve? And if they say, oh, we need everything, we need to find a way to start changing that relationship. I said, look, I'm trying to help here. If you are, no, I need everything, it will be very difficult for us to collaborate. That's part of the saying no. It's not that you say no. You say no wanting to say yes. So you see what I'm saying? So you are always trying to say yes, but you need to set some ground rules. Look, we are on the same side here. We are trying to deliver things, but there are things that I don't know how long it's going to take. And so first of all, you try to establish that relationship and say, look, let's discuss what is really important for us to do. And now you are trying to define the scope of the work. What is important? What is not important? If you had to drop something, what we would drop. That is one side. The other side is not to forget that, as I said, the code is not your baby. And if you need to make some concessions because you have a deadline coming, or because the money is running out, or because you have an important demo to a potential, I don't know, like a sponsor or investor or whatever, that becomes your main goal, right? So if you need to, as long as you're making a conscious decision, we sat down and said, look, in order to do that, it will not be so scalable. It will not be so secure. Or it will be a bit messy. If you want to add more code in that piece of code, it will be more difficult. I know that we have more features to add in this piece of code. I can go faster now, but I need to make it very clear to everyone in this room that when we get to the next iteration or the one before, after, and so on, we will be slower. But then you are not becoming so obsessed with your clean code, with your TDD and stuff. You are now having a mature conversation, a professional conversation of what is possible to do, what is not possible to do, and what are the compromises that you're going to make. But the low level code, you just need to be good at what you do. So do a clean code. Don't leave a lot of static. For example, I believe you use Sonar Cube or stuff like that.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake, you are writing code. Don't leave a bunch of warnings in your code. Write your tests. This is I call it the hygienic tools. This is part of your hygiene. Your code should not have warnings in Sonar. See what I'm saying? So for me, clean code and TDD are part of the hygiene of how you code.
So I think also, let's say, we lose sometimes ourselves in the technical side, let me say. But soft skills are also important, like relationship, as you said, the collaboration is also important. So we need to also focus on these parts to improve ourselves as developers, because we are trying to, let me say, the ultimate goal is to produce something, but we need to understand, as perhaps we need to handshake. So soft skills are really important at that part. And let me say, go back to your book and from a story from your early, let me say, professional lives about code reviews, because review is also important part of it. And I know you just went to an architecture team. There was a task. I think you finished it 2 days, something like that. You went to the main architect and review it, and what happened? So it's really a good story, by the way, from the code review perspective, and let me say where we are.
Yeah. So for those that didn't read the book, so I applied to work in this multinational company, a very large company, and for me it was very difficult to get there, and I was very proud of myself that I was selected. It was in the national newspapers, loads of people applied, and I was able to pass. So I was very proud of myself and stuff. And then when we were there, imagine like the large banks today, for example, sometimes they go to universities and get a bunch of people from universities, and then they just distribute them randomly across departments. So similar kind of thing, but there was a big test and stuff. So then I joined this organization, and I was put into one of the business teams, and nice people. I was having fun. I was enjoying. I was very proud of myself and so on. But there was this special team, if you like, the architecture team, that were very good, and the team leads, like he worked directly for the vice president of the company. So they were a very special team because we had a very large product for governments and stuff. And they were the teams that provided the entire infrastructure in terms of architecture, components and stuff for all the many business teams. I was in one of the business teams, but they were at the center of everything. So then I wanted to work for that team. I said like, wow, those guys are the best ones in the company and I want to be there, right? And so then I did everything I could, like so then I saw the lead, the tech lead. He was a director of something, and I saw him in the having a coffee, and I went there to introduce myself, and I didn't even know what to say to him. So I was like oh my God, God is here, like so I thought that he was like, everything I heard from him was amazing, and so then I told him like, so look, I don't know you, you don't know me, but like I would love to work for you. I joined the company like a few months ago, and I would love to work for your team. And then he had a chat with me, and he was asking me what looked like random questions, personal questions. And after half an hour, he said, cool, so I will speak to some people and see if you can join my team. And I was expecting first of all, just him to ignore me or have a very tough selection process. So basically, like after a month, he told me that I could move to his team, and I didn't really understand what happened. But I understood later. So when he spoke to me at that time, he didn't care about my technical knowledge. He knew that I was a junior, right? So that's why he never asked me a technical question. But what I felt that it was like more a normal conversation. What he was measuring was my passion for software, because he was asking me, what do you do outside working hours? Do you have pet projects? Like, tell me about some of the stuff that you do. And it was all related to software. So then he said, look, I want people like him in my team. So I was hired because of the passion that I had, not because of my technical skills. So that's how I moved to their team. And then in there, like as you were saying, Everin, so what happened was, in the first day on a Monday, he came Monday morning and gave me a task, and he showed me around the system and gave me a task. And then I asked him, like, how much time do I have to finish this? And he said, well, it's Monday, Friday, I come back and I'll see how you're getting on. And the system was in Delphi or Delphi. I don't know how you call it. And I used to code in Delphi in my spare time as well. So, and Object Pascal. So those were the two languages that I used a lot. And then I said, look, you know what? This is my chance to shine. I was working like hours. I was until like very late on a Monday. I was like 11 midnight or something like that. Very early in the morning on Tuesday, I was there again, 7 o'clock or something like that, just going crazy on the keyboard and stuff. And then around Tuesday afternoon, I was done. And then I went to his office. Like back then, the important people have their own office, right? So then I walked, I knocked, and then went into his office and said, look, boss, like, yeah, I'm done. So, and it's working. And then he said, well, cool, okay, of course. But then he said, like, yeah, every time you say that he's done, I would imply that it works, right? And I found it a strange comment, but anyway, so then he said, okay, let's see what you've done. And that was the shock for me, first of all, because, like, I don't know if some of you know Delphi, but Delphi was like from Borland back then, and it was like it was like Visual Basic. It had its own IDE, like every drag and drop. So you have a person that coded in Java or Visual Basic, you had your IDE. Everything was done there. So first of all, he opened this green terminal that I had never seen in my life, which was VI. Later on, I learned. And he opened my .pass in VI. And I was like, what the hell is he doing? And then I had written like about 200 lines. So he went line by line. I said, can you see this? This is not good because this, and that. Do you see this try catch? Do you know how it works in memory? This is very inefficient and stuff. Do you see those 5 lines? You can do that in 2. This and blah, blah. And I had put some because you wanted to show off, right? So I always say that a sign of being a senior engineer back in the day was to write code that no one can understand, right? So if you could write code that no one understands, so wow, this guy's amazing, like I don't even know what he's doing, right? So and I did a lot of those crazy shit and bit shifting, all the kind of stuff, right? So, and then there was this block of code that he was really struggling to go through, and he was like up and down, and then he understood, and so. And I was very proud of that because, wow, this is very, like, I could enable and disable buttons with bit shifting, all this kind of shit. And then he said, he was really annoyed by that. He was really almost angry. He said, "Look, do you know how?" I forgot about how he said, like, "Do you know how?" It was not rude, but like, it's kind of like he said something like, "Do you know how unprofessional this is?" That is something along those lines. He said, and I said, like, "What do you mean?" Like, in my head, like, it's beautiful, and and then he said, like, imagine if the entire code base was done like that. That is GIF code for everyone to work with, just because you want to show off. So he went on. He destroyed my code. Every single line had a problem, and then he asked me, "Do you understand everything I said?" Yeah. He deleted the code. I said, delete the code. And I said, like, like when you have a code shower.
Yeah.
Right? So after hours, long night and stuff, he just deleted it. And then he said, okay, so now that you understood everything, go and do it again.
You have 3 days.
You still have 3 days left. Do that again and do that right. And I was so pissed off. Like, in my head, I just turned my back and moved and started walking out of his office. And then he called me and said, "Sandro." And then he said that phrase that I used for the London Software Craftsmanship when I started it many, many years afterwards. He said, how it's done is as important as getting it done. And that, for me, like, when he said that to me, I was so angry. I could not internalize that. I just left the building. I said, like, I'm going to resign. I'm not going to work for this guy. This guy's called him names, all that kind of stuff in my head, of course. But then it took a long time for me to, well, a few hours, because I was considering to resign. I said, like, this is unacceptable. How can he treat me like that? But then I finally understood that for the first time in my entire life, even going after university and stuff, that someone really good stopped to teach me, because he didn't delete my code from spot. No, he went line by line. That was more than an hour going through this. Once, patiently tell me everything. And then he said, now you're right again. So that for me was the first contact that I had with craftsmanship, because that's the first time that I understood what a good mentor is. You can ask you today, with the society as it is today, that maybe he was a bit harsh, but that was impactful, because he worked on my ego. I have a very ego. I thought that I was great. And he just shattered it and showed me how bad I was, how much I had to learn. And that was a very important lesson. If he had just been a bit soft, if he had to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, this is okay, but could be improved a little bit. Let's leave it like that. And the next time you do it better. I would never learn that lesson. I probably would not even care about craftsmanship today. So I had to have a very powerful lesson that more than 20 years, I'm still telling that story, right?
Because when I read the book, let me say, it's like the 0-day effect, or the first day, let me say, that makes you become a software crafter. It's like a starting point of everything. I understand it.
Yeah, and the guys like working in that project. So I then understood why they had that status. I then understood why they had the most difficult mission to solve, because their focus in not only like trying to strive for quality, but they lived and breathed software. So they were always pushing their own limits. They were not doing that because our boss were asking us to do, because our boss was exactly like that himself. So every time that we sat down to have a coffee or a drink after work and stuff, you could see that those people lived and breathed their profession. And that was amazing to be part of that stuff, Of course, everyone had lives, and it's like, so it's not that everyone had families as well, but like, I mean, they could, so they lived and breathed what they were doing.
It's also a mixture of these three words: professionalism, pragmatism, and pride, like
Yes.
this
Yeah.
story. It's important. That's why I asked you, Sandro.
Mm.
Thank you for the explanation. Also, let's come to nowadays, let me say, for the hiring process. So you are now also, let me say, hiring, making interviews with software crafters. Also, you have a chapter about this in your
Mhm.
book, and there are some examples like asking the questions even you don't know the either, let me say, Intelish, or there is an example, he's asking some questions how to use it, the shortcuts, other stuff. So what do you suggest about this, especially for the junior colleagues?
Yeah. I normally like to see, for example, one thing that we've done, like we adapted our recruitment process many times over the years, right?
Mhm.
So, um, but the one thing that was very important for us, mainly at the beginning, because everyone had to go through pair programming. Now it's not the same, like, um, but most people still do. Most, like for the juniors until a certain degree of seniority, they all go through pairing. And we always like them to bring their own laptops, and the because it was important for us. For example, I can learn a lot as soon as someone opens their own laptop and I see the configuration of their tools. You already can see the
Mm.
difference, right? So if you ask
Yeah.
someone like,
Yeah.
hey, open your laptop, let's do a kata together, some people are not able to create a new project in IntelliJ because they've never
Mm.
done that. They've done once, they joined the company, and then someone helped them to set up the project in
Yeah,
their
yeah,
ID,
exactly.
and they never create a new project ever in their entire life after that. So that means that they are not practicing on their own. So so then just how they set up their tooling already tells a lot about that person. Then there is how the person types. It's not necessarily just the speed, but you know, for example, that certain things are very repetitive. Some Git commands, you use them all the time. So you don't need to type the
Yeah.
whole command. Or how you trigger your test. If you do test-driven development, you trigger your test every few seconds. You should not be using your mouse. So these kind of things, like for example, when you are refactoring code, you live and breathe, you live inside IntelliJ or Eclipse or whatever you use.
Mhm.
You are always extracting a method, you are always trying to move things around. So
Mm.
when you see the person manipulating their tools, you know their mindset. Because for example, a good professional, they would not like to do repetitive work. Everything that is repetitive, they will automate. So they learn shortcuts, they learn how to create templates and stuff. So those are things that on an interview, just seeing people work, but working with them, that's another thing. Because like when we pair, we don't, it's a still, of course, it's still an interview, but we try to work together. And that means even sometimes to criticize another thing that happens in a pairing. For example, you question a decision, so the person evolves a few steps, and then you ask like, why are you going that direction? So have you considered something else instead? And then you start seeing how that person reacts. So I mean, like, if you were in the real world and you had a different approach. So like, why didn't you prefer to do X instead? Even when you know that X would be worse than what they have,
Mhm.
right? But that creates like, okay, how would that person react? Would they be angry? Would they be, oh, interesting, maybe I should consider that or not?
Mhm.
So those things I think that are very important. And this is a two-way street. That's what I wrote in the book. And because although I'm describing from a company's perspective, but your interview process, your selection process is your first contact with that company, right? So
Yes.
so the number of interviews we have, the type of people that you speak to, all of those things are insights that you can have from the company, right? How much time they're dedicating to recruit the right people.
Mm.
If you just have like a half an hour interview with someone from the HR and
Mm.
that's it, I believe that bar is quite low. So you would expect your colleagues maybe not to be at the highest standard.
Exactly. So the hiring process, the requirement process is not a one-way process. It's like two-way, by-way. Also, as you say, from the record, the person, if you apply for this job, it's also important. The experience is also important.
Totally. It's always
Yeah.
because like mainly now after the pandemic, the world is really globalized, right? So
Yeah.
most people are working remotely now. So that thing about being local as we had before the pandemic, it doesn't exist anymore. So the market became much bigger for everyone, for companies, because as I said, it's always two ways, right? So developers have more options now to work for companies beyond the area that they live, but companies also can go out, right? Before we would only hire from London, now we can hire from anywhere.
Yeah,
So then
exactly.
they balance each other out, right? So you need to be, now you are really looking for good people, and you don't have
Exactly.
so many geographical restrictions.
Sandro, before closing, I want to ask one more question about nightmares, let me say, about the legacy codes, the technical debts. Let me say, you also mentioned about this. Probably most of us are also working on these legacy codes, or let me say, leaving technical debts or trying to solve technical debts. So what you suggest about these ones, or how we should behave at that point?
So my opinion on these evolved a lot over the years. At Codurance, we have three main service lines, right? So we have three main types of services that we offer. So we have product development, we have platform engineering, and we have one service line that is the one that I look after that is called software modernization. I love legacy code. So software modernization is exactly what the name means. It's taking important systems, strategic systems that are now a bit complicated to work because there are too many people working and the systems are complex, and then modernize agility back. So going back to legacy, and I now have a very not different view, but it's different from what it was before. There is the accidental debt that we create. An accidental debt is what we developers create. That's what I was saying, like the hygienic practices. If someone cannot even bother to remove some warnings from the code, like or for example, the team cannot even be bothered to agree on some standards, because like I cannot just, like, if you work for a large company, you have loads of different teams, maybe tens, if not hundreds of developers. We need to agree. I cannot just say, hey, Everin, I'm going to work in my own way, and you are going to work in your own way. Like, it will be difficult to work this way, because when I see your code, I will struggle. You see my code, you will struggle. So we need to agree. So this is what I call the hygienic practices. There is some coding standards that we agree. There is some static analysis that we agree. That is, if we write tests and when we write tests, that we need to agree. So those are things that we need to do so that we don't have what I call accidental technical debt. That is the debt that we create because we have bad practices. This is I don't tolerate, right? What I tolerate is when we have a conscious decision. The business is asking loads of stuff in a very short time and say, look, we need to stop what we are doing. We need to go to a room and we need to discuss and look, what we are asking for the time that we have and the amount of people and knowledge that we have, or the structure of the code that we have, this is not possible. So what can we do about here? So then we are now talking about change of scope. We might reduce the scope, and for that we might lower the performance, the scalability, the security, or maybe you're not going to modularize something or stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that the actual, so as we readjust the scope, this is what I was talking about, creating a pragmatic, redefining the pragmatic boundary. You still have excellence in the middle. You still need to have clean code. You still need to have your tests. You still need to work. So I tolerate one sort of type of technical debt that is joint agreed. And one of someone, for example, I don't know how to pronounce his name,
Arrange,
but
arrange.
Erinch.
Yes.
So he's saying, but the stakeholders and product owners blame tech people for lower quality. So it depends on what you're saying. Like, for example, if you're slow because our code is a mess, I probably would agree with them, right? But then if you say, look, no, we sat down, business people, stakeholders, product owners, we sat down, we told you, we agreed that we would lower this bit in here. And if we wanted to continue to build in this area of the system, the foundation that we created for this existing feature or the one before would not be sufficient to build on top of it. So that is acceptable for me because that is a business decision. And technical debt, that metaphor, not always is a good metaphor. That's another problem because that metaphor originally, when Ward Cunningham created that metaphor in the 90s, it was just trying to explain in more financial terms, if you like, that if you don't invest in certain areas, eventually it will be more expensive to build on top. But differently from a real debt, for example, no one will take your house if you don't pay that debt. And another thing, you might not even need to pay the debt because like you might be able to rearrange the scope. And if you are never touching that code again or never growing that area of the code again, you might never need to pay that debt. So in that case, it was a good investment because you were able to achieve some business goals with less effort. But that was consciously decided. And architectural patterns allow you to make the decisions even easier because if you architect your system in a more modular way, then it's much easier because you always localize those decisions, right? Exactly. So that is also important. So for example, if you think about how can we deal with that, one way, a good way to deal with that, to make those compromises and not pay a big price for those decisions, a well modularized architecture would help a lot.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandro. Also, for the last question, let me say from my side, what you suggest in general? So it's really an effective talk for me, but I want to also hear what you suggest to become a software crafter, what to do, what not to do. Also, let me say because in more general, what you suggest?
Look, there's no recipe, right? As I said, there's no recipe that says, like, if you do that, you are a software craftsperson. What I can tell you is enjoy your career, embrace it. I think that's probably I think that a good advice I probably could give, because that's the advice that I had to give to myself. You know, like when people say things like, oh, I have a personal life and my professional life. There is my job and my family. So it's almost like you are one person and you are trying to split your life in two, right? So a personal life and professional life. You need to find a way to combine them. You cannot. This is what I had to do with myself, because otherwise I would never have I have a wife, I have kids, and I also have a family, right? So I enjoy watching films and reading books, right? So it's not everything is software in my life, but I was able to have a single life. So for example, I don't feel guilty if I'm here. For example, I just arrived from Italy, right? So I'm here, I'm not with my kids, but I'm not blaming myself because of that, because I'm also enjoying this. And when I'm with my kids or watching a film with my wife, I don't blame myself, oh my God, I should be reading a technical book. I just embrace. So embrace your profession, bring part of your life. Don't be too focused, I need to do that or that. Do a bit of both. So take it easy, but enjoy. Try to be as good as you can be. Try to be a cross person, and not like, it's different. I always say, like, there is a difference between having a job and having a career or a profession. A profession is part of who you are. A job is something that you do. So that's try to have a profession and not a job.
Thank you, Sandro. By the way, thank you. I'm just checking if there are more questions. I think no, we go over all of them. Thank you for your time. I know you are a little bit tired flying back to London from Italy, Milano. So thank you again, accepting our offer, being with us. It's really super excited being with you because, I read your book 3 times.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like 3.5, by the way, because each time when I look at it, I see new points. Like, as I said, learn how to say no, for example. This is what I see. So it's really important. Last year, we hosted Uncle Bob with us, and it's really a good, let me say, a chance to host you again this year. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, joining our streaming. Thank you, Sandro.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Evren, and to the whole Turkey Java community. I hope to speak to you again at some point in the future.
Exactly. Thank you. See you.